Welcome to The Path. This podcast is a production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Thank you for joining us again on the Path podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Tarkington. Today we have a return guest. He is my brother, David Tarkington, or Dr. David Tarkington, who is the pastor at First Baptist Orange Park in Florida. That is right outside of Jacksonville, Florida. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing a book. It is a book that's written by R. Kent Hughes, and the name of the book is Disciplines of a Godly Man. The reason I chose this for today's episode is I believe this is a good book for any men's group that is looking for something to kind of guide them along. You could do a chapter a week and come back and talk about this chapter, and I think everything in here you can actually gain some very good biblical Christian manly knowledge from. So welcome back, David.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be here.
So I'm going. You've looked up the author's bio and everything. I want to let you tell a little bit about him, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I won't stay long on it. I have Dr. Hughes, Pastor Hughes, and we have mutual friends. I've never met him, but he has in his 80s. He believe he grew up in California, but he pastored for over 25 years in Wheaton, Illinois, up there near Chicago, and has many pastors. Might recognize his name as the general editor of the Preaching the Word commentary, which gets reprinted about every 5 to 10 years. This, I believe he's retired now. Last I read, he's living, I believe, in Pennsylvania. But Hughes is, he's a pastor through and through. And as you read his writings, you kind of get that pastoral shepherding voice. And this book, is one of a number of books he's written that first came out in 1991. This is a re-release, and it's been updated. And as you read it, you can definitely tell there are some updated references and illustrations. I bought about 25 copies of this book. Currently, I'm going through it with one of our college young men, and we meet weekly, and we're just going a chapter at a time. So it really gets us into some great conversations. I just think it's for most men in men's groups and churches, it may be an unknown treasure, just because I don't know. It's older. I'll tell you, the title may not be that intriguing, "Disciplines of a Godly Man," but once you dig in about 2-3 pages in, it's hard to put it down. One pastor reviewer said it this way. He said, "There's a difference between a good book and a great book, and this one goes over the line, becomes a great book, and is one every man should have in their library."
And of course, with the title being Disciplines of a Godly Man, every chapter starts off as discipline of something. The introduction is discipline of godliness, and it goes discipline of purity. The part 2 is about relationships, discipline of purity, marriage, fatherhood, friendship. Then you have the part 3, which is about the soul. Part 4 about character. Then you have ministry. Part 6 is grace of discipline. And then, of course, the book has resources in it, too. And this book actually has kind of a study guide at the end of each chapter. Does yours also?
It does, yeah.
That's a couple questions.
Yeah. And there's another version, and I just ordered it. I've not looked through it. It's Disciplines of a Young Godly Man. So it's targeted maybe to the unmarried young men. So maybe we can do a follow-up with that, or guys can Google it on their own and check that one out.
Yeah. And part of what drew me to this is, if you've listened to this, people know I'm a fan of Jocko Willink, who runs Echelon Front, which is a training company. Jocko was a Navy SEAL, and one of his big things that he says and has on all of his stuff is DEF. It's on most of his shirts, and that stands for Discipline Equals Freedom. So I kind of did a comparison of how can I relate this thing from the secular world to the Christian aspect of this book. So discipline equals freedom, and for Christianity, short-term discipline creates long-term freedom. Christianity is not about legalism or earning salvation. It's about becoming the person God called you to be. So, and anytime you look at these other leadership things, whatever they are, you can always find stuff that brings you back to biblical points. Probably the greatest leadership book there is the Bible.
Sure.
It's just not outlined in the, 12 rules of leadership or whatever, 57 rules of leadership, all those different titles and stuff. So you might have to actually search a little bit more than just grabbing a book that's all it covers.
Right. I agree.
As we start, I'm going to read one of these first things on here, and this was Paul on discipline. And it says, "This being so, the statement from Paul to Timothy regarding spiritual discipline in 1 Timothy 4:7, train yourself for godliness, takes on not only transcending importance, but personal urgency." And in 1 Timothy 4:7, what that says is, "But have nothing to do with pointless and silly myths, rather train yourself for godliness." And I read that and I'm just thinking, man, I kind of fill up all my time with this pointless stuff a lot of times. And I think a lot of men do that, And it doesn't mean that, being involved in something else or having other hobbies is bad. But what are you doing, about your Christian life? How disciplined are you in that?
Yeah, I think when you start thinking about the word discipline, there's an end game in mind. It's for strength. It's for consistency. It's for victory. If you want to look at it in a lot of the leadership books that you might see now, and even the coaches, thinking as just think of the athletes out there. Spring football is happening. There's a lot of things that go on for spring football, and the game's not until the fall. And these high school kids, I guess college and pros as well, they're beginning to work even now to discipline their bodies, discipline their minds. But in Christianity, I don't think it's Christianity. I'll be honest with you. I think it's American Christianity. I think it's Southern fried Jesus. I think it's a version of Christianity that it makes it. This is going to sound really bad. This is my business degree coming back. That is marketed poorly to an audience that you hope will arrive. And yet the old adage of what you sell, what you draw them in with is what you have to keep them with. So men's ministry, it's kind of ebbs and flows. Churches have a lot of history. You see a lot of women's groups gathering. Men's groups kind of come and go. And we've seen that in our own church. There's this surge of, hey, man, we need to get the guys together. We need to do something. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to go eat some steaks, and we're going to go shoot some guns, and which is great. We did all that. We went whitewater rafting. We went skydiving. But I mean, if we draw them in with that, it's hard to keep them because you can't do that every week. The other thing that I've noticed is there's not been a hard challenge in an encouraging way. There's a whole lot of beat down theology. You're a sorry guy. Let's fix you. That kind of mentality. But let me encourage you, as Paul did. Don't waste your time on things that don't matter. Spend your time on things that do matter. And I think we can talk about this in a little bit, but I think it's the fear of boredom that keeps guys, and since we're talking to men, keeps men from engaging in something that is valiant and something that's important, which is biblical Christianity. Kent Hughes may not use those phrases, but to be a godly man requires discipline. It doesn't just happen because you prayed a prayer and got baptized and now you go to your church once or twice a month. That's not godliness. That's not discipline. And I think this is an encouraging way to call guys up, not to necessarily call them out.
Was it us talking the other day about how, I don't remember if it was you and me talking or somebody else, about how as a society we can't handle boredom anymore? And it's kind of stifling, I think, probably some people's creativity because you can't handle being bored. Right. So you're just looking at your phone, and you're not having, those times alone just with your thoughts. And
yeah, well, this is not a Christian reference, but there is a journalist named Manoush Zomorodi, female journalist, Iranian heritage, born in New Jersey. She's been on TED Talks, and she's been NPR. So she's not a believer as far as I know, but she has done a number of books, a number of writings. In fact, she was just featured on the podcast, The Art of Manliness, which is not a biblical podcast, but it is interesting. And they brought her back. Her first book that they brought her in reference was her book called Bored and Brilliant. And then she just recently, in the last week or two, Body Electric. Now, that's a book. If I saw that title, I'm like, well, I don't know what I would want that one. But then you read the subtitle, and it says it's the hidden health costs of the digital age and new science. And she's done a lot of research on brain function and internet. So this is not, hey, go throw your phones away. The internet's evil, but it is. The wise individual will recognize that there is something potentially dangerous and happening in the brains, especially of our young people, because of the perpetual doom scrolling that takes place in the infinity of scrolling on your Instagram or on your Facebook, or even just X or Twitter, whatever it is. And I've been guilty of all of this. I've had to delete a few of my apps, and I'm not calling everybody to delete your apps necessarily, but what Zamarati says is that creativity is birthed in what the world calls boredom. Right? So if we're never, oh man, church is so boring and this is so boring and doing that is so boring. I mean, we're constantly on our phones and on our devices, and there is something happening in the brain, especially with young people. And when boredom is erased, then we're tired. And I think it was one of your previous interviews, and he was a great. Now I can't remember his name, but he was talking about I think he spoke at a lot of your police conventions and military events. He was
Dave Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman.
I think he's the one that talked about the impact of sleeplessness or sleep deprivation is the same as being an alcoholic or being drunk to a degree of how your brain works. And I just. You didn't. We're talking about a men's ministry. Let's go read a book. No one's talking about brain function, but this is all the same. It's all intertwined. And I struggle. I have to get up early to do some reading. I have to find some alone time, and then I feel like I've wasted time if all I've done is for an hour read a book. So I think that's the culture telling me, get some work done, and I'm like, well, that is work, but you don't feel it. You don't feel like it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody listening to this here, I use Audible for almost all, I can't even say reading, I guess, my listening to the book.
Sure.
But even then, a lot of times, like I did this book on Audible, but then I went back and bought it. And if you look at it now, there's tabs all through the book and stuff highlighted. Part of that's for today, but it's also some key points of the book because that's something you can't do on Audible. You can't go back and highlight stuff and make notes about things. But that's when I'm working out, that's what I do. I listen to a book or a podcast. I'm not listening to music. Even though my drive into work isn't very long, I'll listen to, I might get part of a chapter, one chapter in on that short drive in.
Right.
If I wait till I got home in the evening and try to read, I'm going to fall asleep as soon as I start reading it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys might face that problem, but it's not that hard to listen. You're probably going to have the radio on anyway.
I'm proud of you that you actually bought a paper book. That's incredible. And there's no pictures in it too. So I'm pretty excited that you bought a book with words. But the other thing, this is the joy of brotherly banter.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I can't tell you how many times I've read the same page over and over again as I fall asleep. And I've just got to rewire my brain on that. It takes time. So it's no guilt trip. It's just a reality.
Just like on Audible and reading, you could be reading something and your brain totally drift off and you're thinking about something different. And the same thing can happen when you're listening to the book also. And you're like, I got to rewind a little bit and listen to that again.
Well, Hughes even talks about that in the chapter on prayer, which is and I know we may be going a few chapters at a time, but when he talks about prayer, that hits a nerve for me because prayer is, I'm a pastor. I've been in ministry for 30 plus years. Prayer is still very hard for me. I'm talking about focused, intentional prayer. It doesn't mean I don't do it. It just is. It is hard. And Hughes made me feel really good as he said. Sometimes I'm praying, and all of a sudden I'm praying for. I don't know, he's praying for his mother or something. And in my mind, I imagine that car that I had when I was a teenager and I lived with my mom and dad. And then all of a sudden in my mind, I'm thinking about the color of that car and how fast it went and what I had painted on the side and what I used to wear when I drove it. And I've gone down this whole path. I'm like, oh, my bad. I'm praying about my mama. Our brains do this, and you kind of have to discipline yourself to bring you back in a little bit. That's hard to do. But I guess that may be the ultimate message of this. Christianity is hard. And we like easy, and easy Christianity may not be Christianity.
I'm going to read another portion of the book, and I'm not reading this whole book. If you want that, get Audible. But just to bring out some points and give us our discussion topics, but this is why the disciplines. Understanding this, we now get down to the reasons for this book, which is that in today's world and church, Christian men who are disciplined are the exception, not the rule. Why? The answer is that the popular, politically correct culture of the new millennium suppresses manliness, and especially the manliness and leadership of men who attempt to follow Christ. The reasons are feminism, entertainment, and legalism, and together they are daunting. And then during the 1970s, certain feminist strategists initiated the so-called Girlhood Project with the intent of effectively blurring and even erasing the distinction between males and females. And I read that, and this is not to get like political and all that stuff, but man, I think we're seeing that so heavily right now in our culture with, the transgender issues and stuff like that. Well, I'm a girl, but I identify as a boy. I'm a boy,
Right.
but I identify as a girl. And how that was just made, hey, it's okay what you feel. Just go with what you
Sure.
feel.
Sure. Well, I think, especially as men, we men's ministry philosophy for years has been, there's a battle to fight. Let's go fight the battle. I think we're waking up. Maybe we're waking up to the fact the battle has been in a certain arena that we ignored for so long. It was just that whole gender confusion issue, the T of LGBT, the transgender issue. That's part of what has been called not the sexual revolution, the moral revolution. And it was just this past week that you might remember that, and you can say not to be political. Well, it's hard not to be political when it's all in politics. So it was Barney Frank, who used to be, I think he was Senator Barney Frank from Massachusetts. He is now in hospice care. He was the first. He wasn't the first gay senator in the U.S., but he was the first to come out on his own agenda, and he has even said in an interview, which is really throwing a lot of those in a certain area for a loop, because he's gay. He married his once legalized same-sex marriage happened. He married a man, and now he's of course he retired. He's in hospice care. He doesn't have much time, but he basically unpacked in an interview this past week the moral revolution's agenda of incremental change. And he said, I mean, you can go Google it, you can listen to it, you can read it on your own, but it is the one step at a time. And that transgender thing was the big issue. He said, he never said he didn't want it to be legal. He just said it's incremental. He says the left has moved too fast and everybody's pushing back, mainly because they don't want boys in girls' locker rooms. Well, we can try to dissect our lives and go, well, this is a political thing. Well, this is a family thing. Well, this is a religious thing. This is a personal thing. But what we're seeing is that moral revolution is impacting all of that. And I think Hughes touches on that in a way that in his first writings in the 90s this was unheard of. If you'd have said when Hughes first wrote this book that we would have conversations about males going into female locker rooms in the Olympics and winning, playing on women's volleyball teams in college, we would have all said, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But that incremental shift took place. Now, there's this school of thought, well, that's just a political thing. I'm a hater, this, that, and the other. And I think what we're discovering is it's creation order issue. It's man, woman. What is a man? What is a woman? And so men's ministries have just presumed that everybody understands and has the same definition of what a man and a woman is. But now we're having to go, we need to be very clear biblically. What is a man? Biologically, what is a man? Sexually, what is a man? The way God has intended us. And why are we made uniquely in his image, but different than women who are made in his image by his purpose? And I think, you see that Hughes kind of opens that up a little bit. And what you just said is absolutely, we're living in it right now.
Yeah.
And but it feels like it's been this way a long time. It hasn't been this way a long time. It's been this way about 10, 15 years at the most, because this shift has been incremental. And what it's done is it's caused confusion, and even in churches, on how to do men's ministry and what are we supposed to be talking about.
It's kind of funny because here, and it's everywhere where you're hearing about it, it's national news and stuff, but one of the faces of this being against the transgenderism is from here. Riley Gaines, who, I mean, most people know who she is now. She was a swimmer at University of Kentucky, and lost to a biological, or tied or lost with a biological male who was
Right.
kind of the face of the Ford transgender athletes.
Right. From University
But
of
she's from
Pennsylvania.
here. She went to high school like a mile from First Baptist Hendersonville. She went to Station Camp High School. Of course,
Okay.
I think she holds every swimming record there. But so we have that front row seat to her and what she's trying to do to help protect women.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I like about this book is he doesn't really hold back. He just kind of says it how it is.
Yeah.
Like in this line, it says, "A generation of men has been neutered and neutralized as to their natural ruggedness and willingness to undergo the disciplines that will turn them into real men. And Christian men are particularly susceptible to being cowed by this culture because discipline for godliness demands a particular toughness and rugged individuality in a castrating, God-denying culture." And I'm like,
The castrating, God-denying culture is maybe the key, the phrase that could be tweeted out on social media. Let AI develop that graphic for that quote. I think it's a spot-on quote. It's a great quote.
yeah, I was telling you, I just listened to the podcast with the two guys. They've both been guests on here, Lucas Pinkard and Dr. Chris Respass, who do the Church Resource podcast, and they did one about why men's ministry fell. And one of the things they were talking about is it hit me because it's like, I can't expect every man to want to be into the same things I'm into, you know?
Right.
And Dr. Respass talked about, he goes, I don't want to go camping. That is
Right.
that is not what I want to do. He goes, camping for me is staying in a hotel. And I'm like, I'm kind of the same way. I don't want to go sleep on the ground in a tent and then not be able to walk the next day because my back hurts. Do I like to go shoot guns? Some, yeah, but sure. I don't want to go. I feel like sometimes men's ministry, it's like, oh, we're going to go camping, and not every guy likes that. And then they talked about David, and of course David was masculine, but he also had the softer side. He had, the artist side of him, the musician side, where, and don't discount that. That is very important in being a man, is being able to have that side too. And if that's where, you're led, that doesn't mean you're not a man by any means. But I think as far as men's ministry go, we try to focus sometimes too far on the other aspect and not being able to really bring in everybody.
I think it's a pendulum swing. I think we tend to do this in churches all the time, right? So wait about 5 years and the pendulum will swing the other direction. Then it comes back. So whether it was Robert Lewis of Men's Fraternity, which I love, or even the original stuff from John Eldridge and Wild at Heart, and you see some of these things. There were so many. Stu Weber, all these books were coming out at the same time, at the time when everybody, either written by active duty or former military, written by guys that love to be outdoors, written by this, and it was good. There was a need for that. But that was a pendulum swing. Everything went that way. Everything marketed to men in the Christian men world was, let's look at it this way. Maybe just about everything marketed to men in Christian marketing was marketed to men's wives and girlfriends so that they could get them into church. And so it was this pendulum swing into the wildness. And so you had a lot more, you just had that shift. And I think we may have dropped, I don't think he made it intentionally. I think we were focusing on that ruggedness, even as Hughes says, that ruggedness. But when I think ruggedness, I'm picturing a Jeep commercial filmed up in Idaho or somewhere, driving through the mountains. And that's beautiful. And I love going up to the Pacific Northwest and all that. I like the outdoors, but I'm not that kind of outdoorsman. I just, it's almost this, if I don't get there, then I'm not a real man kind of concept. And I think maybe we were selling ourselves short in that regard. My fear is we're going to swing that pendulum all the way back to the other side, and all we're going to do is sit in a room and share each other's sins with each other again and get back to that. I think that's deathly. That's deadly. That's not good. So somewhere in the middle, I think that's where Hughes' concept of the disciplines are internal, the disciplines are structured, the disciplines are not created. They're not something we've just come up with in the last 10 years. They're biblically founded, and in the church itself, and among the community of other men for accountability. I think that's the key. It's the there's not a chapter title as you're looking through these: the disciplines of godliness, disciplines of purity, disciplines of marriage, disciplines of fatherhood, friendship. of the mind. There is not anything in this book that I go, oh wow, I don't think anybody's ever talked about that before.
Yeah.
I just think it's good that it's compiled, and it's short chapters too. So it's forcing us to look at it from a biblical lens. And I think that we've looked at everything from another lens with enough Jesus added to it to make it dangerous.
One of the things he talks about here, and you kind of hit on this a little bit about how having the women and getting the men into the church. And it's the reality is that men are much less spiritually inclined and spiritually disciplined than women. But then it says, surprisingly, for every Bible sold, it is more likely to be a man purchasing it, and yet men are less likely to read it.
Right.
And I'm like, that hit me. Kind of like, I would have thought it was more women buying Bibles. But he's saying it's more men, but we just don't read them.
But they look good on our shelves.
They do.
And
they look like a good trophy.
With incredible goatskin leather, or they have some great graphics on it. That's that's bookstore research and sales research on that regard. You can't ignore it.
Yeah. The next chapter he talks about discipline of purity, and there's a lot we can learn from David in this, and that's what he references. And he says sensuality is easily the biggest obstacle to godliness among men today, and it is wreaking havoc on the church. And I know you and I have talked about, Foster talks about this quite a bit, and how the access to other things on the internet and everything is so much different than what it was 15, 20 years ago. And I think it's true that is wreaking havoc on the church. But not this like watching videos and stuff, but you have dating apps and stuff like that people get on secretly and hide from their spouse, or not. Then the ones that you would think be more innocent, it could be Facebook. And you're looking on there and looking at an old high school girlfriend, and all of a sudden you're talking on Facebook Messenger to each other, and it just starts spiraling down a path, or you start fantasizing about that old high school sweetheart or something. And that's where I think that's more likely for men. I think it's starting to see a shift where women are doing that too, and watching things that you wouldn't think of women watching. And it's dangerous for both sexes, but this is a men's ministry podcast, so we're going to stick to men. But we see that with David and what happened with him, and I think we can learn a lot of lessons from that. That's not the story we always talk about. It's a lot more fun to talk about David and Goliath, is about David and Bathsheba.
My grandson he loves the David and Goliath story. In fact, he's three, I think. And my daughter said, I can't figure out why his T-ball socks are continually in the washing machine because T-ball's over 2 weeks ago. And he looked at her and said, Mom, 5 stones, I'm killing Goliath. So that's his slingshot. He's putting rocks in them. So we're going to try to market 5 Stones ministry for preschool boys. But he loves the David and Goliath story, like every man would. Every book, every Bible, every action figure. We've not approached the David and Bathsheba story with him yet, and we'll wait.
But it says in here, we must understand that a progressive desensitization to sin and a consequent inner descent from holiness had taken root in David's life. I think that has taken place in society's life. We have a desensitization to sin, and we will watch things, and it gets into entertainment later on. But we watch stuff. One of the most popular shows there was the past few years was Yellowstone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing.
Well, every show on TV is made by Taylor Sheridan now. If
it
it's
is
not, it's made by the guy. It's made by Dick Wolf. So you either got all the Law and Orders in the Chicago's, or you got everything connected to Yellowstone at any level. But it's pretty. It was on streaming services. They have I've not watched it, but I know enough about it. So they've got doesn't he have a Yellowstone spinoff that's on the network now?
Oh, there's like 3 of them. There's
but one's on
Marshall's
like
one. There's one called Dutton Ranch. There's like 3 or 4 of them, and it's like, good grief, how many spinoffs can you have from this?
You can have as many as they'll buy. That's what you'll do.
Right.
People are eating it up because of what it is. So there's one that's on CBS, which is the network for me, old people, old men. And then all the rest I think are on Paramount Plus. And so once you go to streaming, and everybody's going streaming, all of a sudden the FCC guidelines are not there because you're not over the air. So language, nudity, whatever it is. I think that I'm with you on this. It's funny though. You go to Europe, you go to England and Great Britain. I've talked to folks there. Of course, there's a different level. If you ever watch British television shows or movies, you'll see things done differently. And I had a talk with a friend of mine over there. He said, "Yeah, in America, it's like if you show a nude body part, everybody goes crazy." I'm like, "Well, yeah, we don't. That's all right. We don't need to see that." But he goes here. He says, "But you'll show violence left and right." And in Britain, it's the flip side. Now, I don't know if I believe that because I've seen some of the British shows that are pretty violent. But I think when we think of the discipline of purity, all we think about tend to be is like all you porn addicted men.
Right.
That's bad. That's definitely bad. But porn is a dopamine hit, right? And so that dopamine, that drug in your brain that makes you go, give me more, give me more, give me more. That's why, I've sat on my computer and an image popped up on my screen and, I accidentally, quote unquote, not accidental, but accidentally clicked it. And now I'm 3 hours into looking at things I shouldn't look at. And now I feel guilty about it. And now what do I do with that? I mean, how many guys have to tell that story before we realize there's something going on here in the enemy's tactic to get that addictive dopamine hit in your brain? So you're rearranging your schedule, finding your private time, waiting till your spouse goes to bed, whatever, because suddenly this is everywhere. I told our junior high and high school boys, and I'll probably, since we don't have a youth pastor, I'm the youth pastor now, and I told parents when they find out, they might be upset, but I said to these boys, I said, "Do you realize you've probably seen more naked people than every generation from your grandfather back to Adam ever saw?" And that 12-year-old's going, "What?" I mean, think about it, because I know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. You have seen more images of nude females than everybody in your family tree from granddad or great granddad back. And now we're desensitized to it, and your dopamine hit, and you don't know and I wish I could just say it's 12, 13, 16-year-old guys. It's 50-year-old guys. It's married guys. And it's really just, it's what's the old word with drugs? It's a gateway drug.
Yeah.
So online porn's a gateway drug, right? And the danger is the next steps. Now, hopefully and prayerfully. Here's the thing, though. We talk about good Christian men. There's this thing in the Bible called the fruit of the Spirit, and one of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. So every guy goes, "I just can't help myself." And I say, "Well, then you're not walking in the Spirit." And I mean, I've said that too. I can't help myself. Well, I mean, that's a confession of sin.
It goes to being undisciplined, which is kind of the key to this whole book.
That's exactly what it is. So if I can't help myself, then I have just declared the truth of what Scripture says. No, you can't help yourself. That's why you need the Spirit of God living within you to change you. And the fruit of the Spirit is all those things: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. But then you get to that self-control when we're like, okay, what do I need to do here? That's the hard one.
If you have your book, this next part is on page 42 down at the bottom.
Okay.
If you want to look.
Yep.
And this is going to jump into some of the next chapter.
Okay.
And it's boundaries. Men, put disciplined boundaries around your life, especially if you work with women. Refrain from verbal intimacy with women other than your spouse. So I'm a lieutenant, and right under me is a sergeant, and the sergeant in my unit's a female. So we have to have a lot of talks, but there's never any kind of intimate talk ever. But it also made me think of Mike Pence, who used to be vice president, and this is one of the things I heard is he would never meet with a woman alone.
Oh, he got crucified for that.
Yeah, and I'm like, that I think that's a good thing. Like, or if you are meeting, leave a door open. I know I was having this is earlier a few years ago, and I was a lieutenant and had a sergeant. The sergeant was male, and we were meeting with a female officer, and he got up and left and shut the door behind him. And I get on my phone right away and told him, "Hey, you either get right back in here or you come open that door." Because for one thing, that's not fair to me, and it's also not fair to her.
No,
because I mean, nobody needs to be spreading rumors about either one of us, and and then having to defend something that never happens just because they see a man and a woman walking out of an office that had a closed door. And he came right. He was like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't even think about it." And it was genuine. He didn't think about it because if I'm meeting with a male officer, I probably would have the door shut. This for the privacy part of it. But I think having those boundaries are very important.
In today's world, that may change too. Meeting with a male officer.
Right.
I'm just saying it's the reality of that. Yeah. So Mike Pence was, and I say he's crucified. The media chewed him up on that one, and even some Christians did. But it's called the Billy Graham rule. That's where he got it from. And Billy Graham had that rule that he set it in place, and he did it because he knew there was twofold. I think the temptation is real there, but for the grace of God, all of us could fall. And secondly, if you're living your life openly as a follower of Jesus Christ, then and even Hughes gets into this later on, but gossip and innuendo and just things said and not said and things alluded to could destroy you. And why put yourself in that position? That's it's kind of like being in a foxhole and wanting to be aware of who all is around you, and you're always on guard. So it's not the woman's fault. And I think that's the thing that in this anti-purity age, and I say anti-purity, there's a whole bunch of books that are pushing against the purity revolution that took place in Christianity with the true love weights and all that from the 90s and 2000s. I still think it's viable, but the movement, I think, went to a point where the blame was on the woman. Don't dress that way. Don't do this. Don't entice. And it kind of dehumanized some of the women. And I get that. I would look at it as like, man, it's on the men. Yeah. So say the women are doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, whatever. It's sinful on both sides. But from the men's perspective, you got to take ownership of your integrity. And without using the woman as the excuse of why. It's because you women. That's not the message. The message is the world is a broken place, and I want to protect myself and you.
In the next chapter, we get into marriage. And one of the things it talks about is sacrificial love.
Yeah.
That's page 49, if you just want to look. But it says, the opening charge in Ephesians 5 is a clear call to radical sacrificial love. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. This call to marital love is a bare-knuckled swing at the domestic commitment or lack thereof among men of the day, just as it is today. Taken seriously, the naked form of these words, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, is staggering and honestly received. The punch it delivers flattens many Christian men because they fall so short. So I think a lot of times we hear that, love your wives as Christ loved the church, and we sit there and like, what's that mean?
Yeah.
So how you're doing premarital counseling and you tell somebody, hey, you need to love your wife like Christ loved the church. And the guy in there goes, what's that mean? What do you mean love them like Christ loved the church? Are we supposed to come together and sing 3 songs and have a sermon?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. So how do you explain that to men and women?
Well, I'll look at it in an old teaching. I didn't come up with this, but it was a teaching on love and dating and relationships from years ago. And part of it is, this might be an easy breakdown for some of us guys. There are numerous words in the Greek that mean love, right? But let's just look at 2 of them as used in Scripture. One is agape, A-G-A-P-E is the anglicized version of that, agape love. So that is that love we've always defined as that love of God, God's love, that unconditional love. So if you're going to say agape love, you're going to get 3, I'm going to give you just 3 things with agape love. We may have already talked about this in the previous podcast, I'm not sure, but 1, it's an unconditional love. So it's unconditional. And secondly, it's a permanent love. Permanent love. I'm trying to remember this, but I'm writing it down. And the third is it's I would say sacrificial. I think that's the word. Unconditional, permanent, sacrificial. Sacrificial may or may not be the word I used. So that's that agape love. And if you look at how God loves us and loves his church, well, it's an unconditional love. When we do not earn God's love, we are loved because he is God. And so, in other words, you can't be good enough to be loved by God. You can't do enough right things to be loved by God. You are loved ultimately and fully. The total amount of love God's ever going to give you, he's already given you because of who he is. And so that love is unconditional. It's a permanent love because it lasts. When a person becomes a follower of Christ, especially, you are adopted into his family. You are a child of God. There's no expiration date on that. So it's permanent. There's no divorce in the relationship with God. And then third is sacrificial love because of what Christ has done for us. The Father gave the Son so that we may have a relationship with him. So he gave it all. So sacrificing himself for the church, for us. So that's that agape love. But let's look at the parallel word. It's another word in the Greek that means love, and it's the word eros, E-R-O-S. And it's the word where we get the English word erotic from. So you can kind of see where that's leading. But let's not get all dirty on this regard. Let's just think of it this way. If agape is unconditional, permanent, and sacrificial, and I'm struggling with sacrificial because I don't know if that's the word I originally looked at, but I'm going to use it. Then eros love is going to be a conditional love. So eros love is that love where I love you if you do this, right? It's the typical I love you that maybe the high school kid tells his boyfriend or girlfriend, right? I love you if you, and then the if you gets very dangerous at that point. And so it's this performance love. And in marriage, it could be the same way. I love you if you behave, if you treat me with respect, if you quit doing X, Y, and Z. It's a conditional love where love is always felt like I have to perform to be loved by my spouse. So that's eros. Another one, it's permanent in agape, but in eros love, it's temporary, and because it could expire, it may end, and man, that's sacrificial. That's not the right word. But I'll come up with that right word here in a minute. But here's the thing about eros and agape. Agape is a love designed for a person, a being. We are to love our spouses as Christ loves the church. Our spouse is a human made in the image of God. We are to love them unconditionally, permanently, sacrificially. But eros love is the kind of love you would have for an item. So if someone says, I love pizza, right? So pizza is an item, not a person. So I love pizza conditionally. What does I mean by that? Well, I want the right toppings and I want the right crust. I want it made the right way. It's a conditional love. I love pizza not permanently. I love pizza temporarily. When I'm really hungry, I love pizza. But if I've eaten too much, I don't love pizza anymore, right? And then the third one is left me. But when you look, here's the main point. When we love people with a love designed for loving pizza, then the love is broken to begin with. And that's not the way Christ loves the church. It becomes a conditional, a temporary, there it is, sacrificial, selfless or selfish. That's the word. So I love sacrificial love. Christ loves us selfishly or selflessly, selfless. He sacrificed himself for the church. That's how a husband should sacrifice himself for his bride, for his wife. But eros love is a selfish love. I love you because of me. I love you because of what you make me feel. I love you because of how you make me look. I love you because of status I can gain because I have a wife and I'm not single. Whatever it might be. It's a selfish love. So loving pizza, I love pizza selfishly because I don't care what the pizza thinks. I love pizza for what it does for me. But when I love people that way, I'm breaking a rule. I'm in a wrong lane. They're both love, but they're different kinds of love. And I think that's the mix-up because we have one English word for love. And I think we're loving people the way you're supposed to love things. And so how does Christ love the church? Unconditionally, permanently, selflessly. How are you supposed to love your wife that way?
Yeah, I brought up premarital counseling, and before we started recording, we were talking about funerals. And you've been in ministry for a long time. Have you become more bold in what you tell couples that you're doing premarital counseling and how you'll do and how the wedding will go than what you were in your first few years as a minister? Because those first few years, is it kind of like anything? Man, I want people to accept me and be happy.
Sure.
And now you're like, hey, I need to make sure this is honoring God.
Yeah, and I also don't care what people think anymore. So that happens. I mean, you care. I say that facetiously. But,
so that takes me to page, if you look at page 55, where he talks about how to answer the call commitment. I'm not, as I said, I'm not reading this book to y'all, but it says we must begin with the discipline of commitment. And it says, I explained that it is rubbish to think that one can break one's vows because one does not feel in love.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and I'm like, man, I know there's times my wife has not felt in love with me because I'm just a jerk quite a bit. Yeah. Just to think, I made these vows, but hey, I don't feel in love right now, so I'm going to go find it somewhere else, somewhere that makes me feel that way.
Man, you're inundated with messages throughout the culture, whether in movies or television shows, books, or even
follow your heart.
Follow your heart. Your heart's a liar. Don't follow your heart. Worst advice ever given at a graduation ceremony is when anybody with any kind of influence stands up there and says, follow your heart. You're the best person in the world. Trust your feelings. Boy, that's great. Trust your feelings. I feel really depressed. I'm going to do something really stupid right now. Don't do that. Don't trust your feelings. Feelings lie.
Yeah.
Couples, I jokingly tell couples, here's a story I heard years ago, premarital counseling. All right. I said, and I'll joke with couples. I said, yeah, I was doing premarital counseling. It was all so exciting because they're still in love with each other right now, but they're in love with an idea. They're in love with the idea of being married. They're in love with the fantasy. They're in love with the concept. But then reality hits, and all of a sudden you got dirty clothes, and you got dirty bathrooms, and you got to clean stuff, and schedules are hard, and people are jerks, and that's who we are. That doesn't mean we don't fall out. Falling in and falling out of love is the stupidest phrase I've ever heard. I fell out of love. No, you didn't. You made a choice. You chose to quit loving. You didn't fall out. You didn't accidentally quit loving somebody. You just chose not to. You chose to ignore the vow you had, and you went and found your feelings met elsewhere, right? And so that happens. I think there's another thing. I think the cult of weddings has grown in our country to such a degree.
Oh, they're ridiculous. What a wedding is now.
I mean, people say, hey, we're going to have a wedding. I say, well, what barn are you getting married in? And how much are you going to spend on it? I mean, and I get it. It's a beautiful moment. But here's the problem. I don't have a problem with big weddings and barns. I don't have a problem. I mean, they're not getting married in churches anymore, but whatever. There is more emphasis and money and focus spent on the wedding than there is on the marriage, right? And so weddings cost. I mean, I just tell couples. I said, you're spending what $20,000 on this wedding. Let's make sure your marriage lasts long enough to pay it off. Yeah. Somebody's paying that off. So you're going to have to work a lot harder to keep your marriage together than you were to show up on time to get your pictures made for your wedding. Your wedding can be beautiful. It's an amazing moment, but it's going to be over. And that wedding's over in an hour, 2 hours, maybe a full day if you have an event. But your marriage is supposed to last till you both are not looking the way you look now. I tell the bride, I said, listen, here's the thing you need to know. I'm in premarital counseling. We do a whole lot with premarital. We talk about they have to fill out a survey. It's done online. I get the report. We go into the details. I mean, and it's helpful. I think statistics say if you do any form of premarital counseling, there's a better chance your marriage lasts. But it only works if you pay attention and you work at it. And so there's a lot there. However, I will tell and I didn't come up with this. I heard a pastor say this years ago. He would look to the groom and he'd say, I want you to understand something about this wedding. This is the last time she's going to be on time. And I didn't say that. The other pastor did. So all the women listening, don't be mad. He said, but the doors open at the end of the barn or at the end of the church, and boom, there she is. The music starts, and you're in tears because she's the best looking she's ever been. So it may be the last time she's on time. We got to go. Let's go. It's happening. And she's actually early. She's going to be there early. And then I look to the bride and I say, and you need to understand, when you look to your groom, this is the best he's ever going to look. It's downhill from here. He's never going to look this good again. Right? And so he said, this is the pinnacle. We're on time. Everybody's here. We're celebrating the wedding. I said, that's great. But the emphasis of what you're pouring into the marriage, feelings, oh no. If you're going to get out of the marriage because you don't feel in love anymore, then you'll be done within a month and within 2 years easily. Yeah. Because those feelings are lies. So you don't fall out of love. I just don't feel in love. Everybody needs counseling. Everybody needs help. No one's doing it right. And most of the people that are getting married have never been, well, some have been married before, but even then, if they've been married before, there's stories there. But a lot of them, they're building the plane while they're flying it. They don't know. And that's with both. And so it's a miracle any wedding, any marriage lasts, because you got this man and this woman, and I'm going to talk biblical, man and woman, who are coming from two totally different family backgrounds, where everything is expected a certain way, and you're merging those into something that's never existed before. That is a miracle God does when he brings two together. So I think we miss the miraculous aspect of godly marriage. And we let the cult of cultural marriage and wedding and say yes to the dress and all of that overwhelm us on those parts.
Yeah, he says at the bottom of that chapter, the truth is marriages that depend on being in love fall apart. Couples who look back to the wild promises they vowed in the marriage ceremony are the ones who make it. There is no substitute for covenant plus commitment. And, the whole book's about discipline. It goes into the discipline and doing the daily habit of, supporting, loving your wife when it's hard to, loving your husband when it's hard to. When the wife does something that makes you mad, you still love her. Doesn't mean sometimes you don't like each other, but you still love each other and you're still committed to each other. Yeah,
Well, that's the, let's look at it from a biblical perspective. That's the agape love. Is God always happy with how we behave?
no.
No, but his love for us never fades. So if we're going to love our bride as Christ loves the church in the Bible, there is the description of the church being adulterous, having affairs, worshiping idols, worshiping themselves. So all of a sudden you've got the bridegroom Jesus who is committed to his bride who has been unfaithful. Now you're going down a very extreme level at that point. But just back up a little bit and go, well, if that's the command for us as men, to love our brides as Christ loves the church, then it's that love of sacrifice, that love of selflessness, but it also is a love that doesn't excuse sin, because now you've got the discipline and the commitment of leading your home, right? That's not a legalism aspect. That's not like a patriarchy thing that's evil. That's actually God's created order and design for health.
Yeah. We're going to move on from marriage. We're going to talk about fatherhood. So both of us are fathers. You know, I have 4. You have 2. So, and it's just, I feel like a lot of this stuff, it's like, hey, we know this. Like you said earlier, there's nothing in here. It's like, oh, wow, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
But we need that reminder. And, you know, sometimes, like with me having 2 adult children and 2 that are in elementary schools still, it's like, man, I see the mistakes I made. And whether if I'd done things differently or not, would have things ended up differently? I don't know. There's no way to know that. You don't have a time machine to go back and change things.
Right.
And I'm sure you have those same things. Like, man, if I'd done this differently,
oh, sure,
would things have been different?
But then the Holy Spirit speaks to you, and it sounds just like your wife, and she says, we could all do better, but if you take the blame for every bad decision your child has made, are you going to take the credit for every good one? I said, well, no. And then, trust the Lord.
Yeah. So some of the key points is fathers shape generations through presence, instruction, and example. I think it's very important for that father to be present with their children, to be around. And probably a lot of us fell at this, but also how we treat their mother. And what we show them, like if you have daughters, how you show them how they should be treated when they get married. If you have a son, how you show them how they should treat their wife.
Right.
Yeah, and there's something, and you have it on the notes I sent you. Children learn more from example than lectures. Man, I think about the lectures I've given, and I guarantee after that first sentence, they're not listening to a thing I said. Just because it's like, oh my gosh, here it goes again, blah, blah, blah. But man,
suddenly every parent sounds just like Charlie Brown's mom.
Yeah.
So there's a generation listening to this that has no idea what that means, but nevertheless, us old heads, we understand.
Right.
I think the discipline of being a godly father, this is a challenge in an era where there are men who had no model of what that was supposed to be, right? And so, grace is a wonderful thing. Guys, you get grace if you screw up. That's a wonderful thing about, I'm so sorry, Lord, please forgive me. The big challenge is when you know you screwed up in your fathering and it becomes evident and you feel like, I think I need to apologize to my 10-year-old or to my 15-year-old. And maybe that is the example they need to see is, an imperfect father seeking to be godly rather than I have a perfect dad that's right in everything he does. And confesses his sin. Spiritually leading the home is a big thing. You highlighted that one here. We are called to spiritually lead our home. The fact of the matter is that I question that. I wonder how many dads say, I'm the spiritual leader of my home. But in actuality, if you interview the kids, they would say it's mom.
Yeah, we talked about, I think that on the first episode you were on, but we might hit that again. But, like I can come up here, I can teach a Sunday school class or connect group class is what we're calling it now. I can do a podcast. I can do stuff in the men's ministry. I'm doing some stuff on Wednesday night. It is so much harder sometimes to do it at home.
Oh, yeah.
And it shouldn't be. That's the most important. That should be the most important part to do it at. And you talked about it may have just been a conversation, but we talked about, being the spiritual leader at home and, and I think a lot of guys, I would get this way, like, I don't want to prepare a Sunday school lesson to do with my family, and I believe you brought up, like, it could be reading one verse. And it's like, hey, what do you think about that verse? Right. And it might take 15 minutes, or this at dinner time, really, you're, And I'm thinking about that, like when we actually all get to sit down at the table, we make the kids tell us 5 facts about their day. Well, we could do that. We could also read, just go to the Bible app and get that daily verse, and you read that verse and ask kids, hey, what do you think that verse means? And that's a step towards leading your family spiritually, leading the home spiritually.
Yeah, I don't know that they're looking for you to do a doctoral dissertation or a full 3-point sermon.
They would probably start hearing like the lecture and hearing the Charlie Brown voice.
I think you're right, but I think what they also aren't hearing is that Jesus is important to me outside of church. And so if they can kind of get that, I mean, and what now I can hear guys going, we never have dinner together. We both work 2 jobs. We're doing travel ball. We're this, that, and the other.
Well, in the car as you're driving, read one verse.
You can, or just here. So you're watching a TV show or a movie or something streaming, or you're listening to some music, and I'm talking about pop music that the kids like, and all of a sudden there's a phrase in there, and it's somebody who multi-million-dollar singer sings this thing about her latest boyfriend or whatever, and you just pause the song and say, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that have to do? What does the Bible say about that? And it's not a judgment thing. Let's just eviscerate and beat up everybody we're listening to. But it's creating that biblical worldview. Say, okay, that's what she says, or that's what he says, or that's what this movie says. But what does the Bible say about that? Right? And I'm not talking about just all these I mean, let's just say, think of this. You're watching some superhero TV show or movie, and the good guy punches a woman who's a bad guy. That is all over the place now. And I'm like, I don't know, something about growing up, I'm like, that doesn't look right. That looks like abuse. But now we're elevating, feminism and everything else. And so you got the evil bad girl who has all these powers. And so the bad guy comes in. And I said, does that not make anybody else a little bit uncomfortable? And maybe it doesn't. Is there a biblical reason why I feel this way? That could be your spiritual leadership. And sometimes it's not giving the answer. Sometimes it's just asking the questions to make people think a little more.
Yeah. On page 64, he talks about fatherhood do nots.
Yeah.
And, we hear a lot of
but
stuff
it's
we're
only
not
4
supposed to.
sentences,
It's not long. Do not provoke your children to anger so they begin to seethe with resentment and irritation. And the New English Bible captures the idea very well. You fathers, again, must not goad your children to resentment. The directness and simplicity of this do not invites us to do some honest thinking about the ways we goad our children to exasperation. And I'm thinking, man, I'm guilty of that.
Sure, I am.
And then it goes on. We start talking about how fathers criticize, and he gives an example of sports in here. And I'm not going to go back and read it, but he was coaching, I think, soccer, and he said it was the only parent he had to either tell, hey, you have to be quiet or you're going to have to leave. Because the parent was going up and down the field and this criticizing harshly their son, but telling him, hey, you're playing like a girl, you're being a chicken, and all this kind of stuff, and had to tell him, hey, you got to stop, or you're not going to be able to come. And I think we've all, maybe some of us have been that parent, especially with athletics, because it can bring out the worst in us. It can also bring out the best in us, but if we haven't been that parent, we've seen that parent, that it's just like, golly, this person's horrible. I can't believe they're talking to their own kid that way.
Yeah, you know what's good, though, good and bad in this? It's easy to say we see people like that, and then we're always like that, even if we're kinder in it. Why didn't you just pass that ball? Why didn't you just kick that a little harder? Blah, blah, blah. I remember, so I try not to be that. And everybody, we try not to. We learn as we get older. I remember when my daughter played basketball in junior high, we were at all the junior highs in our county, they play each other. So we were at not her home junior high, but the away junior high. No buses because it's cheaper. So we just drove there. We're leaving the game. I don't have a clue who won. I don't know how my daughter played. All I know is that there was a girl on the team that was one of the best players, and she was in the car with her dad in front of us at the red light. And my daughter's in the back seat. My wife's next to me, and you're looking in the window, right? And you can see, and I won't name them, but you can see the young girl in the front passenger seat and her dad driving. And I'm watching this, and my daughter's like, what the heck is going on? And I'm like, well, I think he's coaching her up. And we knew he was like this because he did this during the games. But it was continually just with his hand motions and his head bobbing. I mean, I'm like, the girl probably had 20 points, but she didn't have 30. I don't know. So I'm like, I'm looking at this, I'm going, and that is what I don't want to be. So sometimes God gives you but the good news is my daughter saw that too and was thankful that we weren't that. Now,
Yeah.
there's my one win, right? I did it right that one time because I wasn't like that. That doesn't mean I'm good all the time, because sometimes I was more critical than I should be in sports and life and school. I always tell, we talk to parents a lot, and I said, yeah, your kid brings home their report card. They got 5 A's and 1 C. Which one do you see?
The C.
The C. And which one do you talk about? What'd you do here? What's wrong here? And it's either your kid's fault or a super bad teacher or both, or who knows? Maybe they're just not.
Maybe this is not their subject.
It could be. Yeah, or it could be they hate the teacher hates it. I mean, who knows? But even if it is a bad teacher and a bad student, rather than going in and trying to be a lawnmower parent and plow down everything so my kid has an easy life, maybe the best thing for them was to get a C at that point, which I never wanted to admit at that time. Yeah. Maybe it's good to fail a little, and maybe C's not a failure. I get it. Let's say it was a D. Maybe it was an F. Well, my goodness. Maybe it's good to have a roadblock every now and then. Learn perseverance, which is another chapter.
As he goes through this chapter on fatherhood, he talks about excessive strictness, inconsistency, and one of the notes I have: consistency matters more than perfection. We're going to make mistakes as parents, but trying to be as consistent as we can. But then also talks about favoritism. Man, that can be so damaging to both sides, the one you're showing the favoritism to and the one you're not showing favoritism to.
You know what I've discovered in personal testimony is you may not recognize you're showing favoritism, but your kids will see it that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not favoritism. You can go, well, it's not favoritism. This kid did X, Y, and Z. This kid did X, Y, and Z. But sometimes your kids will feel that even when you're unintentionally, in no way trying to show it, but they feel it. So a good father is going to be wise enough to see what is not obvious to themselves.
On page 69, it says, a child needs to also know that their father and his mother are lovers. Quiet and apart from their relationship to him, it is the father's responsibility to make the child know that he is deeply in love with the child's mother. There is no good reason why all evidence of affection should be hidden or carried on in secret. A child who grows up with the realization that his parents are lovers has a wonderful basis of stability. So don't take that the wrong way and think you're just supposed to be like making out all the time in front of your kids. But they need to know that you
like each other.
you might have the police coming if you start going too far with that. But,
that's weird.
Right. But they need to know that you're in love with each other. They need to know that you do have an intimate relationship with each other. No details or anything like that. But they need to know that there is that love that the husband and wife share with each other.
Hey, here's something interesting too. That what you just read is a quote. That's a quote that Hughes uses from Elton Trueblood and Pauline Trueblood. That statement was made in a book that they wrote in 1953. So you're looking post-war baby boom generation.
Yeah.
And the evidence, and that's a Christian philosopher saying. So in other words, I'm saying this is not something created in the 2000s.
It's kind of crazy. That's written in 1953, and I think even TV shows in 1953, the husband and wife were not sleeping in the same bed.
I'm thinking of Ricky and Lucy.
Yeah, right, and two twin beds.
Twin beds, because we couldn't dare show that.
Yeah.
And yet, so there was this imagery, even in the culture, that's a bridge too far. But even in this radical Christian book said, hey, your kids ought to know you like each other and you have a bedroom. That's what he's saying. And that you spend time, and it's not a time for everybody to be in the room together. Yeah. And that's healthy. That's healthy.
We're going to move on to the next chapter. This might be the last one we cover. I don't know. We've been going a little right at an hour now.
Everybody's tuning out. They think it's the wah, wah, wah now. So we're getting one more chapter.
So this is about friendship.
Okay.
I think friendship for men is much different than what friendship is for women.
How do you know that? You're not a woman.
Well, I look at my wife, and she has this group of best friends that they've been friends since 7th grade.
Okay.
And are still friends and still very close. And, and talk all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I had my friend Greg, his son was on one of the episodes, but Greg Stamps, him and I would say he's my longest friend. Right. To the point we were on the same T-ball team when we were like 6 years old. And we don't talk every day.
Right.
We might not talk every 3 months. but when we do talk, we don't really, it's not like hidden, like I can talk to him and it's like we've been talking all the time.
Right. It's like you took a pause and you just completed the sentence 3 months later.
Yeah. But women are different than that. I think they do better at having close friendships than men do. They're probably more open. Like Jamie's told me the kind of conversations they have, and they talk about everything. And I'm like, I would never talk about this kind of stuff with guys.
Right.
She's like, really? I'm like, no. That's
weird.
We might go hang. But, it was somebody else like there's that. I think it's a Jeff Foxworthy thing. Like so and so called that his wife and kids were in a crash. They need prayer. Oh, how bad was it? So and so called his.
Hey, that's a difference in men and women. It's like I'll tell my wife, "Hey, so and so had a baby." She goes, "Oh, boy or girl?" I said, "I don't know. It's a baby." "Oh, how big is it?" I don't know.
It's a baby.
I have no idea. And she goes, "You don't ask any of the questions," and she's right. I don't ask those questions, and women tend to do. Let me ask you this question: your wife and her friends, I don't know, maybe some of them are married. Do you ever have opportunities where you get together and all the husbands of these women who are best friends since forever just sit around in the back and they have these awkward conversations because you don't know
if we have any conversation,
that's
or
it,
we
right.
sit around in silence in the back? Okay, think about this: you and one of your friends in Florida, y'all decide, hey, we're gonna go spend the day fishing.
Yeah.
And you go out there and you're out there 6 hours, but you might only have 15 minutes of conversation in that 6 hours, and it's the best day you've had in a long time.
That's right. It was deep.
Right.
And it was good. And
where if
what'd you talk about? Well, nothing.
Yeah. Well, what kind of bait we're using? The
draft, the baseball season, Jaguar. Right. I mean, whatever. You're talking about nothing until you have to. Yeah. Here's a guy. There was a guy. He's still around. Leith Anderson, not Leif Erickson, but Leith Anderson, Leith. He was. I don't know if he's still pastoring. I believe he's still alive, but he was on a pastor's. Oh gosh, long before podcast, I had this cassette tape sent to me from folks on the family, pastor to pastor. He was being interviewed about friendship, and he made a point, especially about friendship and deep friendship. He said. And whether it's scientifically proven or not, it definitely resonated with me. He said, most people, but he's talking to pastors at that time and male pastors. So he said, most men can only handle about 12 relationships. He said, so think of it like a dozen egg carton, right? If you want to have another egg put in that egg carton, you got to remove one to put it in there. You're not going to. And he said, if you kind of think about the deep conversation, he said, there's more to it than this because it's theological and biblical. But you got Jesus had 12 apostles. Of course, there's 12 tribes. So you're going to have to bear with me on this one. But he said, even out of those 12, if you're doing your New Testament study of the men that Jesus spent 3 years of his life with, day and night, roaming around the Israeli countryside, the Galilee, Jerusalem, teaching, preaching, doing miracles, all of that, these 12 guys were with him. But out of those 12, there were 3 that he spent the most time with, it seems, Peter, James, and John. And he says, so in relationships that men tend to have, we can have dozens of acquaintances. And maybe we can know what's going on with about 12 guys. But we're only going to really know what's going on with about 2 or 3. And he said, we think that's wrong. He said, that's normal. That's natural. And so, in the era of whether it's men or women, I got 12 best friends. You don't. You've just redefined the word best. You have a best friend, and that's why you have a best man and then groomsman. That's why you have a maid of honor. Well, they're all maids of honor. Well, they can't be. I mean, you can call it that, but there's supposed to be like a hierarchy here in relationships. And so I think another thing we tend to do is, that Bible verse that we always use talking about marriages, don't be unequally yoked. Well, that's a good verse to use about marriage, but it's also one to use about your deepest friendships as well. Who are you yoking up with and talking and unveiling your deepest, darkest secrets to? Is this somebody that's going the same journey you are on of faith, or is it somebody you just knew since you were 5 years old that may be a pagan now and give you really bad advice?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you write them off. They're an acquaintance. They're a friend. But my deepest friendship should be my spouse. But beyond that, same gender,
he
same
talks
sex
about
friendship,
that, how your deepest friendship should be your spouse.
It should be. Otherwise, you're man, what if there's an emotional adultery taking place with someone you're sharing your deepest, darkest with? It's not the person you're yoked up to, right? So, but I think about what Leith Anderson said about friendship and friendship with men, friendship. So here's the thing. We tend to go into these accountability groups, which I think are vital, right? Who can we be accountable with? Well, I need to be accountable to a guy who is on the same journey I'm on, not to some rando guy that has different philosophy of life, right? So I pulled up these questions. This is from Chuck Swindoll. Remember Chuck Swindoll? He's still around, but he may be in his 90s now. But Charles Swindoll wrote a number of books, and this was one of the books. I don't remember the name of it now, but it's 7 questions he would ask in his accountability group with his men that he loved dearly. The first question was, have you been with a woman anywhere this past week that might be seen as compromising? Second question, have any of your financial dealings lacked integrity? Oh, see, now it's not just about porn, and it's about other issues.
Yeah.
Third, have you exposed yourself to any sexually explicit material? That's intentionally, not accidentally. Fourth, have you spent adequate time in Bible study and prayer? Fifth, have you given priority time to your family? Sixth, have you fulfilled the mandates of your calling? And the 7th question is the hardest one. He goes, have you just lied to me? Because all those questions are the right questions we would ask for somebody that is our deep friend. And you have to have freedom to say, have you done this? No, I have not. Or yes, I have, when it's a negative answer. Try not to put on an act. But that's where I think the friendship aspect, we can put a bunch of guys in a Bible group together, and it's going to take, if we're doing a Bible study together, if you got a bunch of guys doing Disciplines of a Godly Man, you open it up, 10 guys show up in your Connect group or whatever it is, and you're doing a path group on this. I think it's great, but it may be 4 weeks in before it becomes a real group.
Yeah.
Because initially, I like you guys. I'm thankful we're at the same church. We all say we love Jesus, but I'm not sharing anything yet because here's why. I don't trust you. Because I don't know you.
Yeah.
And if I know you enough to trust you, then 5-6 weeks in, I can say, my wife and I are having difficulties, or I'm struggling with this addiction, or I screwed up with my kid. I don't know what to do. Then we bear it a little bit, and our disciplines of what godliness is becomes very evident in our life. I think we're so accustomed to surface level Christianity that the danger of going deep, and here's the challenge. We're going to do a 10-week study. Boom, we're in this group. Well, then we start another group, and the groups change. Well, now I'm right back where I started with, because I'm like 5 weeks before I'm going to tell you the truth anymore, right? Or you got that one guy who just wants to blurt it all out in week 1, and that scares everybody else off going, if he said that on week 1, what am they expecting me to do? And I'm going to go hide in my Southern fried Christianity that just allows me to go to church, not sing the songs in public, and go home with my wife and have a happy life.
Yeah, you're talking about, and it makes me think there's this saying in the police world, and probably not this app, but all in business world and everything else, that every pat on the back, they're looking for the soft spot to put the knife.
It feels that way.
I think men, when they first get in the group, that's how they feel. Like, if I open up about this, somebody's going to use this against me.
That's right.
And every relationship is similar to a bank where you have to invest in it, because eventually you're going to have to make a withdrawal from it. And that goes in one of the things in this in friendship is true friends confront sin and encourage growth. But to confront that sin, if you and I just met and I start telling you what you're doing is totally wrong, it means nothing.
No.
If we have that relationship built where I've been there, where we've encouraged each other, and then you start kind of sliding down a way you shouldn't be doing, I can call you out on that.
Yeah.
Because I've invested in you. And there's a trust there. Where you don't think I'm just trying to hurt you. I'm back. You'll, might not see it at that time that I'm trying to help you, but you'll see it as you're going through it. Like, hey, he was there for me.
Well, yeah, and I think that's true. I think there is also this reality of positional leadership. So if you're in a job and your boss is saying straighten up, well, that's a positional thing. If you're in a church and you actually respect your pastor, then your pastor has pastoral leadership. He's not wanting to be your buddy necessarily.
Right.
I want to protect you as a shepherd. If I'm a coach of a team and what you're doing is detrimental to the team and to your future, then I'm going to put you on the bench, and it's going to hurt your feelings and it's unfair. But maybe 10 years from now, you'll realize it was the right thing because there's something bigger than ourselves. I think that peer relationship is definitely what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If I don't trust my
that
peers,
part was about the peer relationship.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there with a peer because he's not my peer yet. I don't even know, is he my buddy? Is he in the foxhole with me? Are we fighting the same battle? Or is he the guy that I need to not turn my back on? We just don't know.
Talk about friendship. Do you think men, it's much easier for us just to have the acquaintances than the true friendship? Like you're involved in some civic organizations. I would say most people in that with your acquaintances where you'll say hi to each other, exchange pleasantries.
Sure.
And then you're on about your day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's much easier, but I think it's also, here's what I think also happens. I think when Facebook and social media turned the word friend into a verb, we screwed up language. And when we screw up language, words matter. So now we have this social media construct of I friended somebody. No, you didn't. You clicked a button for someone that is a friend of someone you know, but you have no idea who they are. And now they're quote unquote your friend on social media. And what you've done is you've dumbed down the definition of friend. So everybody's an acquaintance at some level, right? And so I think we're struggling with, what is a real friend? Well, in order to have a real friend, you got to be a real friend. And I'm like, I'm their friend on Facebook, but you're not a friend. And people get ticked off when I say that to them. They go, they are my friend. I said, what are they doing today? I don't know. Let me look. All you know is what they ate today because that's what they posted, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in their life. And you also we're finally waking up to the reality of the social media version of your friends is fake. It's a perfected version that I want to promote to the world, not often the real version, unless there's some real issues there and it's a crying out moment.
Yeah.
Here's my beautiful wife. Here's my wonderful kids. We're on this incredible vacation. Our life is perfect. Everything's wonderful. What that does is it creates an image that is not necessarily, maybe it is. Maybe they are beautiful. Maybe your kids are great. That's wonderful. But it's an image that says, man, everything's going well in his life, but not in mine.
Right.
But the reality is, no, it's not going well. There are real people having real issues, but we don't talk about that on social media. And we shouldn't. That should be real talks with real friends.
Good. In this chapter, he talks about David and Jonathan and the friendship that they had. And on page 83, I'm going to read a part of this, and this is after Jonathan has been killed. And David writes, "How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Jonathan lies slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished." And, I think for the military guys, they can kind of feel that because there's a bond you have with somebody who you have been in a battle with, a true battle where death is on the line. I don't know how many friends men have where they would be able to write something like that about one of their friends if they passed, if they died.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, was it in that same page? C.S. Lewis says, "Friendship is the instrument by which God reveals to each the beauties of all others." It sounds almost too poetic, and it doesn't sound manly enough. And when you read that David passage,
this doesn't sound manly.
What's that?
What David writes doesn't.
It can surpassing the love of women in a sexually confused culture.
Yeah, if you read that in today's society, it's like, was David gay? No, he
wasn't gay, as evidenced by the rest of his story. But nonetheless, I think here's the thing, and I used to say this about some friends I had years ago. I said I had a couple of friends. One is the guy that if I'd call him in the middle of the night and say, "Hey, I need your help," he will be there immediately. Yeah. The other one might not answer his phone. Right. And so who are those guys that will come because that brotherhood is so tight, so deep, so the love is so intense that it is that no questions asked, I'm here to help. Right.
Well, there's that movie with Ben Affleck, and I think it's the one that shoots the arrows in the Avengers movies, Jeremy Renner. And he goes to him, and you see the scene, "Hey, I need your help. We're going to have to go hurt some people. I can't tell you why." And then the response is, "Okay, who's driving?" Yeah. And that, that's a different, that's not biblical necessarily. But then we'll joke around "Hey, who's that friend that's going to help you hide the bodies?" Yeah. It's a different way of saying the same thing like you're saying. Who's that friend that's going to answer the phone?
That might be the quote you don't want shared on Twitter. Who's going to have about? No, but I get the point you're making. Right. Is that who's that one is going to show up? No questions asked. Yeah. I need help. And I need someone to sit with me. I need someone in the hospital waiting room with me.
Yeah.
I need someone. I mean, it may not be an extreme thing like that, but it could be.
Right.
Who's the one who is willing to be inconvenienced? We're in the world of convenience. So I have friends as long as it's convenient to me. So here's the question, Jeff, and maybe this is what we wrap it up on. Maybe it is that discipline of being a godly friend is the discipline of showing godly agape love to a man in a godly way, so that you are showing that permanent love. He has that permanent love. It's unconditional and it's selfless. I will be there for you. And I think we isolate ourselves and we hide. We isolate ourselves and we create images of the kind of man we want to be, or we are just comfortable with, I don't know, I just soon sit at home and maybe guys like I'll play Halo all day with other people online.
Yeah.
Okay. But that engagement with individuals, they're not that they're not real people, but they may live on the other side of the planet. Who's the person down the street? Who's the person in your life? Who's the person? I read these stories. I'm like, I read one the other day. Somebody, it breaks my heart that, somebody dies in their apartment and they don't notice it for 10 years because no one ever checked on them.
Yeah.
Right. And then they find them like, oh, they're all like rigor mortis and gross and Norman Bates' grandma or mom or whatever it is, because they didn't have that kind of friendship. No one, they had neighbors. They didn't have friends. They didn't even have acquaintances. And so that, I don't want to be that guy. I want people to notice I'm gone.
Yeah.
But I want to be that kind of guy that is necessary. It was, I don't even know if we're allowed to quote Andy Stanley anymore, but it was a great quote he had. And I'm working with some guys dealing with some major illnesses right now. And what do I do? And the message he said, listen, you need to spend your time where you are uniquely irreplaceable. And in a man's life, uniquely irreplaceable is a resonating phrase, because here's the fact. I'm the pastor at First Baptist Church of Orange Park. If I resign tomorrow, I promise you within a year, there's another guy in my office, right? If I'm the boss at a business, unless it goes out of business, there'll be somebody else sitting in my chair.
Yeah.
If a police chief or a fire chief, somebody else is going to be appointed. If a congressman dies, they're going to elect somebody else. Those positions are important. They're not uniquely irreplaceable. But where am I uniquely irreplaceable? I am currently the only husband my wife has. I am the only father my kids have. I am the only grandfather on this side of the family that my grandkids have. That is a uniquely irreplaceable relationship. And with my dear friends, I am the only friend like me they have, thank the Lord, right? So, and vice versa. So spend time when you can. And time is a commodity. You don't have unlimited amount. So spend time where you are uniquely irreplaceable, because many of these men are like this. We are defined by what is our name and what do we do? That's it. What is your name and what do you do? I am this person and this is what I do. But that what do we do is going to be changed, right? That's going to change. Who I am is not. So the discipline of a godly man is recognizing that in God's eyes, we are not godly men because of what we do, but because of who we are in him and how we respond to that in discipline and our relation. And everything in here is a relational issue.
Yeah.
Relationship with God, relationship with people, relationship with those younger than me, of the opposite gender, of coworkers, of friends, even relationship with myself in those private moments.
Yeah.
Christianity's hard.
It is.
And I was reading, this is the longest podcast in history. So I was talking to our
It is not. This is not our
week.
longest one yet.
Oh, good. Then maybe they'll listen to half of it. So here's the thing. I was talking to our teenagers last Wednesday night, and I was reading a bunch of random names, not random, but names of people in the Old Testament. I said, do you know this guy? No. Do you know this guy? Well, I've heard of it. Do you know this guy? Well, I read the Bible through, so I guess I do. Do you know this guy? And I named 10 people. And they went, yeah. I said, what'd they do? They go, we don't know. I said, let me read 2 more names. Joshua, Caleb. Oh, yeah, those are the Joshua and Caleb. I said, the other 10 are the other 10 spies that went in to get into the promised land. 10 out of 12 came back and said, even though God has promised us this, even though he said it's our land, even though he said we have victory, they're too big, they're too strong, we can't win the war, we can't do it. 10 out of 12, majority rules. Joshua and Caleb said, our God's big enough, he's already given us this. The only 2 names that have gone down in biblical history that most Christians know today are Joshua and Caleb because of that. But they had to wait 40 years before they could go into the land after that debacle. They went back to Moses, and 10 out of 12 said we can't do it. It wasn't 10 out of 12. It wasn't a statement against Moses. It was actually a statement as we really don't believe God is who God says he is, even though he's already brought us over the Red Sea, he already did this, already brought us out of slavery. This is a bridge too far. And here's what I told these kids. I said they stood on the verge of getting into a land of promise, but they looked across and said, that's too hard. And I said, that's the message that many Christians today have bought into. This version of Christianity is too hard. So I'm going to go change churches. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do just enough, have just enough Jesus to be dangerous, but not enough Jesus to make a difference. And so the hard life of a Christian is what's being avoided by men who are being told, do the hard things, suck it up, rub some dirt into it. It's not always going to be fun, but it's going to be worth it. And you might go down in history as a Joshua or a Caleb, or you might go down as an unnamed spy, one of the other 10 that I don't even know their names. I'd have to look them up again. Do the hard things. And I tell you what's hard. Discipline is hard.
Yeah.
Discipline is hard. It's not supposed to be fun. But I will tell you, it's worth it.
Yeah, and back to the beginning where I used the whole Jocko thing, discipline equals freedom. It really does. As a Christian, and everything you do, the more disciplined you are, the more freedom you find. The next few chapters, it's like the next one's disciplines of the mind. We kind of covered that, like what you're letting your mind intake has such a great influence on you. The next one's discipline of devotion. We talked about that with, hey, what are you doing? How can you do that? Where, hey, it's riding in the car, you hear a song and you do something with that. Discipline of prayer. How hard that we've talked about prayer, and talked about how your mind can start wandering when you're praying, and next thing,
absolutely,
you have to go back. The discipline of worship. Discipline of integrity, I think, is a huge one. And integrity means being the same person in public and private.
Right.
The other thing is doing the right thing even when nobody's looking.
Yeah, that's fine.
You talk about things being hard. Sometimes that's hard.
Yeah.
It gets into discipline of the tongue. That's a very difficult one. Sometimes my tongue can be pretty sharp and cutting and hurting towards others, and that's a hard thing for me to control. Discipline of work. Perseverance, that's how it finishes out the book. But I would highly recommend this book to men and women. Really, I think it's just good for anybody.
I think it's a great book. Maybe one of these days when you can't find anybody else to come on your podcast, call me again. We'll do part 3, and we will. But I mean, you could literally. I mean,
even with the first half, we kind of covered the whole book because it starts kind of getting.
But if you jump into that integrity and those other aspects on the part 2, 3, you can bring some other guys in on this. That's incredible. Man, I appreciate letting me be on here. Let me tell you what's about to happen. I want to try to be. I want to model what we've just talked about. And I have a 6-year-old granddaughter about to start a soccer game, and there's only one granddad on the sideline today that has my name that will yell, "Kick it, knock them out, run hard, get a goal." All for Jesus' sake. And so that game's coming up in about 45 minutes, so I'm going to probably have to head out of here in a minute. But man, this has been good for me to chat with you. And
it's different than our normal conversations, so I enjoy this. This facilitates conversations we probably would not normally have. We wouldn't sit on the phone and discuss a book like this. We'd be talking about our parents and what's going on and just different things like that. Do you have what's going on at First Baptist Orange Park and there in your community? Do you have anything happening there?
Man, it's North Florida. Everybody in America is moving either to Texas, Florida, or maybe even North Carolina and Tennessee. They're all moving here. And so we've got some huge growth happening here. Infrastructure that can't handle it, which is a fun joy. A lot of new churches coming up. Our church itself, we're located in an older part of our county, which we're just realizing it is an older part, but it's good. I told you I'm doing youth ministry now because we don't have a youth pastor, so I'm going back to what I love, but I'm still the senior pastor of the church, so I'm trying to be disciplined with my time. But that's a family ministry focus for us, of intergenerational ministry, so that's pretty exciting. We're seeing some good things happen. I want to give God glory for all of that. We're not a mega church. I don't think we will be a mega church, but I do want to be mega impactful for the kingdom. And by sending people out, helping start new churches and seeing our people grow as disciples. We're an older congregation too, and younger at the same time, but that means a lot of funerals, but a lot of celebrations and a lot of legacies. And so we want to do that faithfully and remember those that have gone before us.
Well, great. Do you want to say our prayer closing us today?
Yeah, let's do. Let's pray.
Okay, I'll let you.
God, I just thank you for the opportunity with the technology you provide for us to chat on online like this, and to dig into a book that is about the book, about you, about the Word, and that gives us insight into how to live our lives well. Lord, there's not a man I know that doesn't want to do well. I mean, our intent is we want to do well. We want to be approved. We want to hear you say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." We want our spouse to say, "You're a good husband." For our kids to say, "You're a good dad." We love that. We want that. But Lord, sometimes the fact of the matter is we fail and we don't know how to get back up. So Lord, keep picking us back up. Teach us the disciplines necessary and surround us with men that love you more than they love themselves, so that we can do more for your kingdom, more for ourselves, more for you, that will impact us, as we always say. All glory to you, and it is good for us to bring you glory. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for doing this today.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Path, a podcast production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee. For more information, or if you have questions, please visit our website at FBCHville.com. That's FBCHville.com.